going on, ladies and gents? Welcome back to another SLA video. And just in case you did miss the actual testing live, you missed out on a lot of fun. We did quite a bit of the testing grounds for you. We're going to show you guys those testing results, plus give you guys the full-on review of Allon's orb, aka blue balls, that Cha is just keeping away from the nookie for SJW. Poor guy. Poor guy. But nonetheless, this weapon is quite impressive. We're going to go over some of the numbers and give you guys some of the comparisons we did, some of the fights we did. Now, just keep in mind a couple of things before we go into this. Number one, Guild Boss, not water weak. POD, not water weak. So we tested it out in 3 different environments. We're going to talk about all 3 different environments and give you guys the full-on testing results. We did a comparison between that, the Allon's orb, and we did one with Kasaka Venom Fangs, of course, with the new Truth ones. Well, not new, it's fairly old now. And then, of course, we did a comparison to the Grimoire, all supporting the scythe, the brand new water scythe, and making sure to see which one actually complemented the most. And quite honestly, the results were pretty damn good, so I'm very happy to give you guys those results. Now, a couple of things to remember also: this testing will always have the Wolf Assassin attached to the Blessing Stone, because of course the Wolf Assassin buffs the scythe, and also it's going to have Intuit on most of them because of the 200 extra intelligence that Allon's orb requires in order for it to function the way it's supposed to function. So before we get into the actual numbers, let's go over the kit for this weapon. I got it to A10, and let's talk a little bit about what makes it special and why it's unique and what it brings to the table. All right, guys, let's get into it. All right, folks, before we get into the actual numbers and data, I want to remind everybody, Content Creator Program is going on. Click that support button, get yourself 2 free active codes right now, and more to come your way. It's simple, it's free. Log into this account, click that support button, go to my page. When the codes are sent to you manually by me, log into the support section, click on the coupon history, download the code, and then put it into the game and get yourself some free loot. It's super easy, guys, and it's always pinned to every single comment and description of every single video. It benefits me and it benefits you, so I appreciate the support. All right, guys, let's talk a little bit about the numbers. All right, everybody, welcome back. So let's talk about the weapon. First off, draws. Real quick, I did black tickets and I did weapon tickets. Got very lucky, actually. I think it took me maybe 700 to get it fully out. But I also remind folks that in the shop there is a brand new, I guess, package, if you want to call it. And every time you buy one of these packages, they give you a free, quote unquote free, I'm going to say quote unquote, of course, weapon to buy. And that is going to be the Allon's orb. You can actually get an 8.3 version, I believe, of the weapon by just going through this bundle. So make sure you guys check it out. And if you are interested in buying this weapon, I think this is probably one of the fastest and best ways to get it without having to go through too much tickets. So instead of buying the ticket packs, if you are planning to spend responsibly, of course, but think about what's available. And of course, the fact that this availability here is limited, plus it gives you the weapon. So don't worry too much about everything that's available in terms of the shop for weapon tickets. Actually buy the packs and get yourself a couple free copies of this weapon, because that's probably the most efficient and best way as a pay-to-win player to get it. Now, I am on my pay-to-win account, of course, so keep that in mind. Now, this pack is, I believe, gone now for me, just because I already purchased it, but it's within this section here, somewhere in the shop. You'll be able to find it. Very straightforward. I think it's called Allon Orbs. Pack or something like that. Anyways, let's get into the weapon itself. We're going to review the weapon first and talk a little bit about what we did and how we got the results. So first off, it is a 10. I got all the skills to max, got it to level 120, of course, and then we're going to talk about what it brings to the table and why it's actually one of the most unique weapons, plus one of the most fun weapons to use. So first off, Jinna's precision is increased by 0.5% up to 5% for every 20 intelligence points he has using Dominion Storm, grants the user a shield, and also activates the rolling tide effect. Okay, so the shield, you guys can see, is equal to 10%. Let's just say 10% of the user's max HP. They forgot the percent number there. And then also Rolling Tide increases damage dealt by 10%, total damage, and then also increases water damage by 10%. And then Maelstrom increases water damage taken by 8%. Now, this Maelstrom here is going to be amplified further in later results. So A1, every 10 intelligence points that's added increases the water damage by 1% up to a total of 20%, and if Sun Jinu's intelligence stat is at 200, which is what you want it to be, or higher, it activates Lunar Drift, which in this case, if the user's MP is 41% or above, increases water damage by 20%. If the user's 41% or above, it also increases the water weapon skills. So not only are you getting the water damage increase for multiple ways, but you're also getting the weapon skills of any water weapon by 30%, of course amplifying this weapon and the stat or the scythe by quite a bit. And this is an infinite duration, by the way, so as long as your MP's up, you're good to go. All right, the user's water damage increased by 10%. A3 is really the magic touch. It increases the user's damage dealt by 20%, increases the water damage dealt by 20%, and then when a water weapon hits, it inflicts Maelstrom. Now this time Maelstrom also stacks 4 times at the 8% mark for 20 seconds. So you can stack it very quickly, of course, with the scythe, get the scythe hits 3 times in a row with enough advancements, right? A4 cooldown is down by 20%, and then A5 is still pretty big deal. It does increase total crit by 10%, and that's a flat 10%. You're not losing any diminishing returns. And then you guys can see it's water weapons, of course. And then also Rising Tide now increases water damage by 15 instead of 10, and then increases water damage weapons by 60% instead of 30%. So very, very big. I would push this to A5 quite honestly, just to get the maximum damage, but it is very much going to have to be paired with the scythe. Without the scythe, this weapon is only good as a support unit for you as a damage dealer and your weapon skills, but also regular skills. But mostly it is built, as you can see, a lot of it does say weapon skills rather than just overall skills, so they do really want you to pair the two of these things together. Now, we tested it in 3 different places. Number 1, we tested it in the instance mode because of course we don't have GB or POD currently with water, so we did test it on this boss, and we tested it in 3 different ways. I want to show you guys those numbers real quick while it's available. Okay, so Kasaka on the instance boss, we pretty much killed it with 126 left. Now Kasaka is unique in this case because that and the scythe both use the Wolf Assassin Blessing Stone. Okay, now the rarity doesn't matter for the scythe, but for Kasaka it does matter. The only reason why Kasaka even stood a chance here with the orb in play, you guys can see Kasaka did 126 left, orb did 123, is Kasaka is unique in a sense that it has a special trait that no other weapon has. It just does better overall in instances. Okay, that's very important to remember, that it is called a dungeon killer. You guys can see dungeon killer increases crit hit rate and crit hit damage, and Vanish Crusade always does water elemental damage regardless of the enemy, and then of course it just does overall damage, more damage in instances. This is very important to remember that, so it's going to be much more of a bonus, all right, in instances overall. Okay, so that's a very, very big thing to remember with this specific one. So entering the instance dungeon activates dungeon killer. Okay, right there. So that in that regard, in instances, Kasaka Venom Fangs is actually a very, very good weapon to use. It's actually comparable to the orb, but that's where where everything stops. Everything else, you're really not going to be seeing much of a comparison anymore. We did the Grimoire as well. Grimoire was nowhere near either of these. Grimoire is really there to help you punish opponents and help your hunters do more damage, but not necessarily meant to be paired with this weapon. So the scythe was always incomplete. Now, when we went and did the Vorka WOBL hard mode, you guys saw the beginning, that's where the numbers get crazy. Okay, so you guys can see here with the full rotation, full on rotation with the Kasaka Venom Fangs and the scythe, we're getting roughly about 81 to 80% on numerous times. That's a full on rotation, which you guys will be able to see right here. I'll show you guys in the video. And it's honestly, it's one of those things where you got to be very careful, because in this video, it's showing off a couple numerous things, right? It's showing off the Kasaka Venom Fangs, and it's showing you guys how it fares in comparison to everything else. So right here, you guys can see we did hard mode, right here. I'll show you guys right now, right there. And we're using the Kasaka Venom Fangs. This is the instance mode of it. All right, now this is going to be the Vorka's mode. Now the Vorka was interesting because she took so much damage from me when it came down to the Kasaka Venom Fangs, but then when I started using the orb, the damage was way, way different. Okay, you guys can see I'm entering right there, and we're going to show you guys some of the numbers right now real quick, okay? All right, guys, so this right here is with the orb. You guys can see we're jumping in right away. We do a full rotation. Full rotation equals the weapon skills into the normal skills, into the basic water skills, and then doing your full rotation. Now we always hit around 72 as the minimum, up to a 64 as the maximum. And it was pretty obvious that the orb was way more powerful. You guys saw the intro of the video in the beginning. That was actually very consistent at 64% within the first 15 to 14 seconds. And it was, again, a very consistent number that we kept getting. Now with Kasaka, on the other hand, unfortunately, we couldn't go anything below 81%. You guys can see here, we're casting it, right, doing all the moves, because you lose that major effect where the instance no longer is in play, and because of that, he is no longer doing the same amount of damage. So you see I stopped at 85 then. When I did Thunderstorm, it took him to 80, and then 80 was pretty much the average you kept getting at that point. But when it came down to the orb pushed her literally to like 64 to 65%, and then the Grimoire did roughly about the same as the Kasakas, so it wasn't that impressive. But when it came down to the orb, it was an absolute destruction. Look at this. Boom, 66% right there, right? I didn't even cast Thunderstorm. If I casted Thunderstorm, this would have pretty much put it down to like 59, 58%. So in a span of 15 seconds, 14 seconds, guys, we're able to take almost half of the opponent's HP off. So absolutely worth getting this weapon only if you have it with the Scythe. So if you can get this weapon to A5, if you can get the Scythe to A5, if you have the legendary skill for the brand new Piercing Thrust for water, you are going to be rocking water content. This is going to be a major deal for BOTs, PODs, and guild bosses, especially if you're trying to min-max the most amount of damage. So for me, this is a must-have weapon if you have the Scythe. If you don't have the Scythe, I would start collecting both. Remember, you can actually craft the Scythe now. That will be ending in the next week, where then they'll allow you to craft this orb. So decide what's better for you guys. I would personally start with the Scythe first because everything, you know, falls upon that. But this orb is not to be scoffed at because it does give you so much water damage and damage increase that you guys can just use the Piercing Thrust skill and still benefit quite a bit. All right, folks, thank you so much for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, leave a notification. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.